Before 1950, if you went to a movie theater to watch science fiction, you were likely under the age of 12. The genre lived almost entirely on the fringes of Hollywood, treated as Saturday matinee fodder, filled with ray guns, cheap fantasy, and pulp adventures. But the post-war world was accelerating rapidly. The atomic bomb had forced the American public to take advanced science seriously, and researchers were openly discussing the engineering required to eventually leave the planet. Germany's V-2 rocket proved that machines could actually reach the edge of space. We were suddenly looking at hardware capable of breaking through the atmosphere, making the moon look less like a fantasy and more like a viable destination. Real-world engineering was moving faster than Hollywood's imagination. A massive, untapped audience of adults was waiting for someone to treat space travel as a serious scientific endeavor. Animator and filmmaker George Pal saw the demographic shift. He wanted to build a movie around a completely radical concept, a realistic spaceflight with no monsters, no flying saucers, and no alien invaders. The major studio system refused to back it. They were convinced that audiences would reject a space movie if it didn't include the familiar tropes of fantasy and pulp adventure. To get the film made, Pal went independent. He struck a two-picture deal with Eagle Lion Films, pairing his risky space concept with a warm, conventional comedy about a dancing squirrel called The Great Rupert. The comedy was supposed to be the financial safety net. Destination Moon became the expensive gamble. The production was a test to see if moviegoers would actually buy tickets to watch four men simply fly a rocket to the moon using real physics. Even before the cameras rolled, the production hit a massive roadblock. They had to show an audience what a journey to the lunar surface looked like when no human being had ever seen the Earth from orbit, let alone taken a photograph from space. Pal bypassed Hollywood set designers and hired people who spent their lives thinking about tomorrow. He brought in science fiction author Robert Heinlein as a technical advisor and co-writer to anchor the entire script in mechanical engineering. To build the lunar landscape, they relied on hard data. The filmmakers consulted scientists from Caltech and used high-resolution imagery captured by the enormous telescope at the Palomar Observatory to map out the geography of the moon. The production adopted the strict principles of hard science fiction. Every decision on set, from the design of the spacecraft to the movement of the actors, had to be justified by actual physics rather than narrative convenience. Handing the art direction over to physicists and astronomers meant prioritizing function over flash. The sets were built to replicate the cramped, utilitarian reality of a military mission. The film even slows its own plot down to teach the audience how a lunar mission would actually work. It spends valuable screen time explaining the mechanics of rocket propulsion, mission financing, and the critical importance of payload weight. There are no hidden civilizations waiting for the crew in space. The suspense comes entirely from environmental realities. The vacuum of space, limited oxygen, and the awkward challenge of moving in zero gravity become the primary threats. This bar chart plots spacecraft weight against the fuel volume required to break lunar gravity. Realizing they can't lift their current mass, there's no miraculous fix. The crew strips away communication gear, oxygen tanks, and equipment, lightening the ship until the math finally works. By making physics the main antagonist, Destination Moon proved that a movie could derive immense dramatic tension purely from a mathematical problem. When the films premiered, Pal's safe comedy flopped, but Destination Moon drew long lines of adults to theaters across the country, becoming Eagle Lion's highest-grossing film of 1950. The industry took notice. At the 1951 Academy Awards, a genre previously associated with children's matinees secured a win for special effects and a nomination for art direction. Within 12 months, American theater screens were flooded with major science fiction productions. Titles like The Day the Earth Stood Still and The Thing from Another World were rapidly greenlit by studios scrambling to catch up. Destination Moon provided the exact proof major studios needed. It showed that ambitious, futuristic storytelling could earn critical respect and massive box office returns, kicking off a golden decade for the genre. Yet today, if you ask audiences to name a classic 1950s sci-fi film, Destination Moon is almost never mentioned. It has been entirely eclipsed by the very movies it helped greenlight. The genre quickly adapted, leaning into colorful worlds, flying saucers, and larger-than-life threats. Next to those spectacular adventures, 4 men doing math in a rocket suddenly looked a bit too quiet. Reality also caught up with the script. When Neil Armstrong actually stepped onto the moon 19 years later, the film's bold speculation became historical fact, turning a vision of the future into a relic of the past. The meticulous paintings and artistic predictions of the 1950s production were replaced by the desolate gray reality captured by authentic Apollo mission photography. Watching it now requires a shift in perspective. But for 90 minutes in 1950, a small group of filmmakers looked up at the night sky, treated space travel with total sincerity, and made a theater full of people believe we were finally going there.